And we're going to go ahead and kind of take a dive into the housing market, usually what we do on Mondays. And so this is a little tickle out there. We're going to be going live here in a few minutes, and you'll see us in a little bit once, as we call him, God. Judah Whitcower gives me the thumbs up that we're playing the promo. Look at that, huh? No Jerry Miller, but I tried. Thank you. Thank you, God. I appreciate that. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. As you can tell, Jerry's not doing the intro today. He's enjoying some well-deserved family time, and we're going to dive right in. But we've got a couple of things we want to talk a little bit about today. At least I'd like to talk a little bit about today. I've been promising everybody on the show that once the reassessments hit, we'd start talking about them. And Fluvanna County's been the first one to hit, and we're going to take a deep dive into this. But I've got a brother from another mother, a dear friend, a business partner, and is it fair to call my work husband across the table from me, Quentin Beckham. So those who do not know Quentin Beckham, say hi, Quentin Beckham.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Monday after Thanksgiving.
That's right. So how was your Thanksgiving?
It was really good. It was very full. There was a lot of traveling and visiting, and
you visited the Smiths, didn't you?
Multiple Thanksgiving gatherings that I got to pop into, and I really enjoyed that.
You popped into the Smiths. How was that experience?
I did. You have a very interesting family.
You got to find interesting for us, please.
Good people. It looked like they were having a very good time.
We were having a good time. You caught us just about after so many bottles of wine and cocktails. We were just about loosened up. So I'm going to reach out to Judah. Judah, how was your Thanksgiving, and what did you do? I told you to be ready, please, sir, for the camera and the mic.
I had a great Thanksgiving. Spent the time with my parents and some friends from church, and I learned a new way of cooking a turkey.
Which would be what?
You cut it up before you put it in the oven. Cut it up, salt it, put all the pieces in a pan in the fridge overnight, and start the carcass cooking on the stove in a big pot for the stock, and the next day you just gotta put a little sear on the skin of the turkey, put them in the oven right in a pan, so you don't have this giant turkey taking up the entire oven, and they came out great. Plus you can time, like the white meat doesn't need quite as long as the dark meat. Worked great, and
we fried up 2 this year.
Fried?
Yeah. We love fried turkey. But my dear friend Quentin Beckham brought us something over for breakfast the next morning, which was out of this world. It was I can't even describe what it was. It was delicious, is what it was.
So my friends call that cracked potatoes, but
cracked potatoes.
Yeah, basically you use potatoes as a medium to put all sorts of other good tasty things in.
Cracked potatoes.
Yeah.
Well, it worked because we ate through half the pan but we had a house full of people. So look, normally on Mondays I kind of start with week over week, and I just want to throw this out to the legend, the myth, the man, Quentin Beckham, and see what he thinks about the market. So I've been following a week over week, right? Been doing it for a couple of years, and every day I take a picture of our market monitor that I have on our Paragon, and I learned, Mr. Miller taught me this, that you actually can date and timestamp these things. iPhone does it for you. So interesting, last 7 days, so this is the car footprint on the end of it. 29 new homes came on the market, 42 went pending, and 44 sold. That being said, same week last year, Date's a little bit different. 10/18 to, excuse me, the last week ending yesterday would be tomorrow. Excuse me, tomorrow would be 62 units. So that's almost half, if not more than half, on new. Pending was 102. We're down to 42, so we're like considerably below that. And then sold was 103 versus 44. So basically the same 7 days, the same footprint is half of what it was last year. And the question is are we back to normal, or is this interest rates, or
Oh,
what
gosh.
do you think?
You know, normal's just a word I hate to use when you and I are sitting at a table. I think we're
The only normal person in this, this animal in this thing, it would be Liza the dog.
This is probably true. I think we're returning to a form of seasonality, whether that is just being forced because of rate hikes. You know, if you look at a lot of the data, the other thing that is down by about 50% is initial mortgage applications. So if you go through those things as well, it makes sense that we would see sales and pendings and everything else dropping.
I just read an article in Inman this morning. It's actually been up, mortgage applications have been up for the last 3 weeks on that end of it, which is it's a great sign.
They've
Don't-
been up from an enormous trough.
Correct.
So rising, but still not where they were.
Up is relative,
Yeah.
right, compared to where
Still
you
not
started.
where they were eight weeks ago. And I think you're starting to see mortgage rates decouple a little bit from the Fed. So if you look at these 3 weeks that you're talking about, them starting to crawl out of the pit, it's also because as the Fed rate went up, the mortgage rate started to tick back down. And so just like any other supply and demand feature, as mortgage companies and banks are feeling the applications drop off, they're going to start creating incentives for people to apply and get into a mortgage, which will mean not following the Fed rate, in lockstep.
So on my feed or Quentin Beckham's feed, if you have any questions for Quentin and I, please drop them in. We'll do our very best to kind of get to them and take a look at it. I kind of wanted to pivot to reassessments. And we've been talking about this for a while. And Fluvanna County is the first county to reassess, to send out the reassessments. They actually came out this weekend. I want to get back to that in a minute. Just to put this out there, City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County will do their reassessments January. So generally you get your reassessments at the end of January, mid-January, and then in my hot little fingers, they have in both of jurisdictions, or all the jurisdictions, have an appeal process. In City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, you have to the end of February to do it. Fluvanna County hit us with a bit of a curveball this year on a couple of levels. One, we've got the assessments on a holiday weekend. And what's more important, if you want to appeal it, you have to do it by Friday at 4 p.m. on the 12th. So that's, excuse me, the 9th, I apologize. Let me recorrect myself. December 9th, 4 p.m., 2022. So that's
So you got 2 weeks.
basically, well, yeah,
You got 2 weeks.
10 business days, really.
And I'm assuming that means raise your hand that you want an appeal.
Very, very good question. So it has to be in writing, and there's an email, and if anybody takes a look at my feed, I put the email address in there, and we'll figure out a way to go ahead and drop it in the feed on the show as we're doing it live on that end of it. But you need to, in writing, appeal it, and on top of that, you have to give your justification for the appeal. So the way this works is they hired Parson Appraisal Services out of North Chesterfield. And as you know, they just do a desktop appraisal all the way across the board. And so it's interesting. I posted this morning on a couple like closed groups at Lake Monticello in Fluvanna County. And it was very interesting. The first response I got back was, why is this important? And it caught me off guard a little bit. To me, I guess I dwell in this world so much. I understand the importance to it. But from your perspective, why do you think value is important? Or the assessment is important?
I mean, I think as we go through the assessments, let's talk about Lake Monticello since that's what we start. So let's just deal with that. You have a community that's had a lot of homes sell in the last 18 months. And there's a really strong argument for similarity in the appraised value because they're in the same locality, same services, the vast majority of them have a smaller bandwidth of when they were built and what kind of homes they are. So I think if you're in that closed Facebook group and you're getting responses from people that purchased in the last 18 months, I think their question of why is this important to me is just because they have known no other appraised value. I think what somebody like yourself who has owned for, let's say, 5, 10, 15 years might be feeling is, oh my gosh, all these other people bought homes. My appraised value has now gone up by 25 and 30%. Would that be a fair estimation?
It would be a fair estimation, except the second response that I got back was exactly that. I just bought my house last year. My tax assessed value is $50,000 over what I paid for it, right? And the question follow up is why is this important to me? So Judy, if you wouldn't mind, step process. So let's just back up a little bit and talk about the process here, right? And how this thank you, Judah, how this works. So it's basically a triangle. So step number one is what we're doing right now, is what the county or the jurisdictions do right now, which is your reassessment. So they do these mass appraisals, basically desktops, and they're required by law to show current market value. And then those hit the inboxes, actually snail mail. I've got one in my hand from my house on that end of it. Step number two is the budget, right? So they have this process, they do the assessment, so now they know what their value is of the realty. Then they do the budget, and then once that is set, then they set the rate. And the rate could go down, right? So, it could go down from what it is, because in theory, if the budget stays the same and the assessments are high, the rate should come down to equalize it.
And the rate is what we call taxes, and when you put all these things together and you get a bill, we call that the effective tax rate.
And that's why that big dollar symbol is in the middle of the triangle.
Yeah.
That's why this is important. So your assessment is just one part of that triangle. You have to have the other two in order to establish what your value is, or how much money that you pay in taxes a year. So all the jurisdictions do it the same way. For instance, Greene and Nelson are not doing it this year. They're doing it in 2024. They're required to do it, and if Neil is watching, he'll jump in and correct me on it. I think it's required every 5 years. I may be mixing that up with the comp plan on it, but they're required the jurisdictions are required to do it. But back to the question, is this person who bought the home middle of 2022 that is upside down, according to her, by $50,000, why is the appeal process so important to them? Why does that matter, do you think?
So I think what you're getting at is being priced out of your ability to exercise great home ownership by a sudden burst in taxes. And I'm a little less concerned about that for recent purchasers, because in all fairness, like, they knew the job was dangerous when they took it, Fred.
Yeah, sure.
So
They should have known, and right.
And you were buying to, what you saved on purchasing before the home sticker price was $50,000 higher is still a better deal for you in the long run. I worry more about folks that have owned for longer periods of time. Forgive me, guys, I know these are not who we usually talk about, that might be on fixed incomes, and they bought at a time when, their current value is so dramatically different that their real estate taxes are just becoming a burden to maintaining home ownership.
So before you showed up at our Thanksgiving meal, part of the reason we were so behind schedule, my mother and father fit that exact criteria. They're in their mid-80s. They're retired New York City firemen and a very fixed income. If you don't think, as soon as he walked in the door, I got handed this, and he said, what am I going to do about this? How can I, because what they do in it, they tell you what, so this is my personal one. My personal house went up $80,000 year over year, which is going to cost me $700 if the tax rate stays the same. My father's house is valued a little less. It's a different neighborhood within Lake Monticello. His went up $50,000. He's going to be paying another approximately $500, assuming the tax rate stays the same, right? The tax, he's going to be paying about $500 a month. Plus HOA dues went up, plus insurance went up. And we literally had the rest of the conversation of the day is, I don't know if I can afford to stay in my house because his pension doesn't go up because of inflation and so forth and so on. It's pretty fixed. So, why it matters to them, this assessed value. So we're going to appeal it.
And if you are over 65, every county in Virginia has some sort of tax abatement program. So if you're over 65 or in some cases disabled and you're on a fixed income, depending on the value of the property and assets you might have and blah, 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 you fill out a very long form. You can often require for tax relief, as it were, that helps you pay the taxes and stay in your home.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and somebody should take a look at it and put it on the feed. If I was sharp enough and smart enough to go ahead and do this, I would. That number, that threshold, that the minimum is very low, and most people that I know, because my phone all day Saturday, all day Sunday has been ringing off the hook. Literally tens upon tens of people going, oh my God, what am I going to do? On that end of it, to qualify for that, the threshold is really low. I don't know it off the top of my head, but to your point is my parents, their net worth is over the minimum. Therefore, they don't qualify.
And the minimum is often based on the area median income.
Correct.
And is a derivative of that. So in areas where we have a low area median income versus the value of the home,
Well, it also is
you're
their
going to have a
total.
wider gap.
It's also their total assets too.
This is correct.
Right. Now, the other one that if you're a disabled vet and you're over 70%, it doesn't matter what your value is. You automatically get you get. I know this because I'm trying to get it myself. Don't smile about the disabled stuff. I gave them your number. They wouldn't call you to go ahead and verify. Yeah, Smith is disabled. But you actually, when you go to threshold of 70%, you don't have to pay. But why, to get back to my train of thought, why the assessed value for my parents or for us? Like I'm over 80,000. If I appeal, and we will appeal and we will win because we know the market, and they're required by law to set it at market value, and I can prove this is what the market value is. Even if they lower the tax, the cents per hundred down to 75, I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to go from having to pay $800 a year to possibly paying $300 to $400 less a year. So that's why this assessment appeal process is so important. People on the feed this morning were saying, well, they'll just adjust the rate. Well, if they adjust the rate and your value is still high, you're still potentially going to be paying more money, maybe not as much as what they're showing on the ticket on your reassessment, but you will still be paying more money. So this really matters. And the other thing that matters the most, and we'll keep on doing it and follow Neil Williamson at Free Enterprise Forum, the budget process and the rate process will start in earnest around February, March. But you only got 2 weeks, guys.
Yeah, you only have 2 weeks.
That's insane.
And yes, they may adjust the rate, but there's no guarantee that they will.
Well, that's step number one. So the way that it works is you actually appeal to the assessor, in this case, Parsons, right? We do this kind of every year because every year they get our house way above my thing. I usually start the conversation of is, okay, if you can give me over $500,000 for my house, I'll take a check. Here's the keys. Mrs. Smith's been trying to get me to move forever. I'd be more than happy to take that number, but that number is $80,000 above what the market will bear on that end of it. But yeah, it's just, I wanted to start the show this way, guys. I think it's super important to get this information out there. So how do you appeal it? Right? How do you start this process?
Well, apparently you send an email,
But you got to include, this is why
but you need a reason. And so if you're listening to this feed, you're in Fluvanna, and one of your trusted counselors has been Mr. Smith, he might be a resource.
Maybe Mrs. Smith.
Yes, well,
We all know about that.
Yeah, we all know.
Everybody knows about that.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which always makes me think of the movie, and let them help
Which one
you
am I? Will Smith?
determine
Which-
what a CMA really looks like for your house.
Yeah.
So that you have a comparison from a third party. And, we talk about a lot about why you need boots on the ground and an actual human
Sure.
realtor is because all of the things that we can do by aggregating data gives us a statistic that can churn out a number, but it really has nothing to do with the specifics of your property and the neighborhood around it.
So I reached out to Woody Fincham yesterday, and I'm going to pivot a little bit. He posted it, so it's out there in public. His wife is not doing well, so anybody who's listening or watching this, say an extra prayer for his wife. She's in the hospital and not doing well. So, and he took my phone call, which was honoring to me. He took it, but I asked him. I said, "Look, how does this process work?" Because he used to be an assessor for Albemarle County. So what happens here is Fluvanna County sends this out third party, and they hired this Parson appraisal. And they just do desktop. This is just off the top. They do not look into it. I want to go back a little bit, Quentin, to this person who bought the house that was $50,000 under the market. My advice to her, because she called me on the way in, is I said, look, if I was you, I would do a written contestant, and I would include my CD from the recent sale 5 months ago, 6 months ago. That's the market for 2022. It's not the market today. It's the market for the whole year. And see what happens. It's a step number one. If they reject you, so that you know, the next step forward, and you still think that you're overcharged, is you're going to go appeal the Board of Equalization, which won't happen until January.
Yeah. And I think if we're talking about somebody that purchased 6 months ago, they have a really strong argument that in 6 months they didn't have a huge, because you're talking, I'm assuming, a 20 to 30% increase in the value of the house in 6 months.
So of the 24 little tickets that I got, mine was actually the lowest at 18.79% increase. Most of them are in the 20s. That's the ones that I received.
Which is very consistent with what City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County saw last year when their assessments came out, or January of this year. I think there's this. I think as we go through this process, one of the things that can get confusing is that you have current market analysis, which we like to call a CMA. So you have the CMA. You have the assessment, which is what we're talking about that you just got a letter about, and then you have an appraisal, which is what happens every time you want to use the house as collateral for a loan, mortgage, HELOC. And so your assessment going up $50,000 to $80,000 really doesn't mean that your house is going to be worth $50,000 to $80,000 more when you put it on the market or when you go to take out a second or a HELOC against the house. And so I know there are a lot of people that sit back and think, in the 10 years I've owned this home, I've tripled my investment. And that may be true. It may be that you've quadrupled it. It may be that it's gone up 2 times. But that only happens and is known in the context of creating a loan against the property. And so those appraisals, things like Woody does, happen for a very specific circumstance, for a very specific purpose, and they don't necessarily translate into any value outside of that circumstance.
At that very specific moment in time.
At that moment in time.
So,
and then assessments, one, we have to meet a budget, and that's a function of the rate, like you talked about. But the assessments themselves are sort of the aggregate and should have some sort of median line of what the value of the neighborhood is. And in relationship to the services that it draws out of the locality, because your property taxes, your real estate taxes, fund your police, your firemen, your schools, primarily. And so it should all work in relationship to that.
So it's funny, timing is everything. So Judah just sent me a text. Thank you, Judah. So Bill McKenzie, thank you, Bill.
McChesney.
Thank you. Look at this.
He's not going to pronounce it, Judah. Give it up.
Not all of us are named Smith.
Give it up.
Give it up?
Yeah,
Bill.
move on.
Bill. Love you, Bill. Thank you. Sorry I butchered your name there. Anyway, on Jerry's feed sent me the text, which basically speaks to what you just talked about, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, Bill, if you don't mind. Maybe we ought to talk, kind of take a little further down the road. What's the real difference to an individual buyer or seller with the assessed value versus the appraised value, right? So most cases, it's been my experience, that the assessed value is usually below market value. Generally it is. This is the reason why this has been triggering so many people right now, that it is, I think, in many cases, way over what the market value is. So it's very interesting. So I'm looking at my ticket for my house. 2021, 2022, they kept it flat. And look, I'm an open book, right? It was the low fours, about mid fours, which is about exactly where the market value for my house is. And it jumped up to the low fives, right? And so, hold on a second here. So, that's a huge jump. But 2 years in a row, 2021 to 2022, it stayed flat. The market from 2021 to 2022 increased. So why, in God's holy name, did that stay flat?
Maybe they're just playing catch up this year.
My suspicion is that's what it is. I think this next step, this budget step, is going to be super interesting, because if we set the assessments at this, but budgets increase, which they usually always do, we may be in Fluvanna County, we may be above 0.87.
So, one of my questions, and I don't know that I have a strong sense on this, but it's one of the things that comes to mind as we speak on this, is if the home values in the county and across the state have gone up by 30% over the last 2 years, like we all know they have, because that's what the sale prices have been, why shouldn't your assessment go up 20%?
You know what, and I don't get that. I don't disagree with that, right? But has it gone up commensurate with the market? And why has 2021 and 2022, and there may be a simple answer that I'm not aware of, it stayed flat. We do this for a living, right? I know for a fact, 2021 to 2022, the market went up, the values went up. So why in year 2022, it stayed flat? At least in my case. I can't speak to other, because I don't have the other 12 sheets in my hand. But again, Bill, thanks for the question. The big difference between appraised and assessed, appraised is, as Quentin just said, it's just the function of this triangle. It's just the way that the county or the city is going to raise money. It's the first step of this triangle that we've been talking about, and it's just the number. And in my case, Fluvanna County's over 95% of the value that's in the assessment comes from rooftops, not commercial, which is the real bugaboo in that process.
And I think we've had that conversation a lot, that the lack of development, the time it takes to develop, actually works against us in terms of municipal budgets and real estate taxes. If you want to have good municipal budgets with lower real estate taxes, you need some higher density housing. You need greater number of doors and residences to tax in order to make that a reality. And I'm curious, as we move through time, if we do see the reduction in home values next year that we're expecting, which, depending on who you listen to, is somewhere in the 3 to 10% range by this time next year, what that will do with assessments. And in most of the last 10 years, it's not like you see assessments go down. You might see a pause where they stay the same, but the way assessments work, they don't generally go down.
So it's interesting, as thank you, Judah's sending me comments from folks. So Neil Williamson, which I did not know, so I learned something today. Most, if not all, the assessments are audited. Curious how Fluvanna has fared in those audits. So my assumption, based on this comment, is that in order for this to go out, somebody must have audited it. And, you know, I could just tell you, of the 12 that I looked at over the weekend, every single one of them were not 20% over the previous year. They may have been, 5 or 10%. There was an increase when I took the time and did the CMA for each individual property of those 12 properties that I did. And my suggestion, we provided a service to our community, and I said, look, this is the assessment today, the CMA today on your property. It can't hurt but send an email and say, I appeal this, and here's the data. And they, if they lower it, you're ahead of the game, because you'll just pay less cash.
And I think, like many processes in our government, and in particular local government, decisions have to be made at an aggregate level, and we depend on local citizens to stand up and say, hey, that's not me.
Yeah.
That, you're wrong, and this is why. Because you do have to do they can't go visit every home in the county every year.
That's the purpose of the appeal process.
That's the purpose of doing it statistically, and then having an appeal process to tighten that up.
But my issue, Quentin, with this is, why only 2 weeks? That is a super short timeline, particularly after the holiday, right? Most people have been, probably don't open up their mail until today. I got the people that opened up their mail on Friday.
I think you have a valid point with the 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, even 30 days is short notice to go ahead and do this. But what I'm trying to hopefully get to in today's show, as Quentin said, is if you're out there in Fluvanna County and you have this ticket, you have your reassessment, and you feel that it's over the value, reach out to a trusted advisor. Reach out to somebody that has a realtor somewhere in their name, and say, look, is this right? And they'll tell you, they'll help you. They'll help you assess it, and if it's right, then it's right. And it is what it is. But if it's over and you feel the need to go ahead and submit it, I would encourage everybody to do it. I know we're doing it. I do not want to pay an extra, if the rate keeps the same, an extra $700-800 a year.
I don't disagree, and I understand that. I will point out that Virginia is beneath the median and in the lower half of the country in terms of real estate taxes, if you go state by state. I think New Jersey's the most expensive, and I forget who the least expensive is off the top of my head. And in the car footprint, we are not in the highest tax rate for cities or counties. Now, the effective tax, that is a combination of those values in the tax rate, I'm not sure where we rank in that. But if you just look at percents, you're living in one of the cheaper states, in one of the cheaper areas when it does come to taxes. So whether you win or lose the appraisal, the appeals process, try and hang on to that Thanksgiving spirit of gratitude and be a little bit grateful that you're not in New Jersey, where your tax bill would be 3 to 4 times higher.
I'm going to behave, because I was going to make a Jersey joke, but I will not make a Jersey joke.
You can make a Jersey joke, but you open yourselves up to, you have some unforgiving people on the feed. They're going to make jokes about you.
Of course. I'm not watching the feed at the moment, so they're making jokes about me. I purposely don't watch the feed. That's why Jerry does a great job at that. You know the old joke about why people in Manhattan are so depressed, right? You know that joke?
I don't.
The light at the end of the tunnel is Jersey. I'm sorry. As a New Yorker, it's just the way it is. So interesting. So Yona, on our way in town today, said something to me which I did not check until just now. If my assessment holds true, right, because she's texting me, she just did the numbers. My house in Albemarle County, would the market value be what the tax assessed value is in Fluvanna right now? So if I pick my house up and go to Albemarle County, my my property be worth the low fives, market value of that. And it's interesting, if the tax rate holds the same and I can't get it to reduce, I will be paying more money than Albemarle County. Albemarle County's tax rate is 8.54, current tax rate. We're at 8.87. So this would be the first time I've ever looked at this, that if I took my house at the current tax assessed value, moved it into Albemarle County.
But are you sure it would be worth the same in Albemarle County? Would the price go up? Because there are three parts to this triangle.
There are 3 points, and that's what Mrs. Smith's cranking numbers out
Yeah.
over here for me, and I would never contradict Mrs. Smith, at
Yeah.
least publicly. but yeah, so the house is basically the same value. That's weird, you know. I would be paying cash if everything is equal. I would be
Yeah.
paying actually a little bit more.
If
cash.
only everything were equal. I think when it boils down, when you start thinking of groups of citizenry, where we really get up in arms about this is, it's less about paying taxes and more about what that money is spent on. Do we really get the value in schools that we want? Do we have good policing? Do we have good healthcare services and emergency services? You know, are firemen well paid and happy? And we have lots of them, so nobody's waiting an hour for an ambulance when they need it. And do the services of our municipality really make us feel like we're getting a value for the money we're paying? And I think the other piece is, for folks that have been in generational homes, or maybe they bought a home 20 years ago and retired in it, do we have the appropriate programs at the appropriate levels that make sense for today to help keep them in those homes? And I think most folks, even with the tax bill going up, if they're feeling good about how those programs are working, if they're feeling good about the services that they're getting, you're going to have a much less pushback
Sure.
over that amount of money.
Sure. I just think the people that bought last year, first of all, let's talk about how that process goes. They bought last year, depending on who helped them close. Now, Closure Title, I know, does it correctly. They would go ahead and do the right assessment, the right value, so that your monthly payment would be commensurate to the value of the home at that given time, right? That's how they go through that process. Maybe the closer did not use the right value, maybe used an old value, then you could possibly be balancing out equal. And I'm getting a couple of comments on my Facebook feed from this Lake Monticello group, and one of them is asking me, well, how do I know my house is $80,000 over? Have I had it appraised? This particular individual does not know. Yona and I have been in the business for 35 years. We're real estate professionals. We know the given market at any given moment. And oh, by the way, I had my house appraised this year because I've been thinking about, let me rephrase this. Mrs. Smith's been thinking about selling it, and we just wanted to get an appraisal done. It's over $80,000. But if anybody wants to buy my house for over $500,000, DM me, I'll sell it. Be more than the broker's going, oh my God, Smith just said this. But that's the reality. That's the reality of it. Anything else you weigh on your mind? Do we want to pivot to a different topic?
I would
Mr.
think of it very
Beckham?
similar to your HOA.
Pardon?
You pay so much a month for your HOA, correct?
Yeah, $90.
You and everybody else in that private book.
$90 a month.
And so I think I would look at taxes the same way I would think of an HOA. For what I'm paying,
But here's the difference, though. Quentin.
do I feel like I'm getting a value back? I'm not saying there's not differences. We have to pay property taxes. We have a vote in both local government and at the HOA level. It's both connected to home ownership.
And I don't get a chance at Lake Monticello Owners Association to appeal it. I literally
That's
don't.
a whole different discussion for me, but I think there's a value statement in there. We talked about this last year too, and I think this is something that the county should think about. At the city level, when they were talking about raising taxes, we had a big discussion on how disparate the income levels were amongst the homeowners, and our fear that those at the bottom end would get pushed out of home ownership. Those homes get flipped foreclosed on, recycled, or otherwise move on in a way that is not equitable to the families that own them, and in some ways might gentrify and give us a more homogenous local community than what we're actually seeking to have. And I think that's a valid consideration for every municipality as they go through this, to make sure that they have the appropriate tax rates to meet a budget that provides quality and doesn't push out those folks that are in the bottom rungs. If you want to judge a municipality, see how they take care of the least amongst them. And I think that's true of most local government.
So that was exactly the conversation at the Thanksgiving table before you showed up, right? Before you joined us, I should put better choice of words. My parents really are getting to the point that they can't afford to live in their house. Now, they're mid-80s or early 80s. I think I just got myself into trouble with my mom. And she watches the show and I get the phone call. I'm not in my mid-80s, so Mom is not in her mid-80s. Dad is. Mom just crossed into the 80 mark. Sorry, Mom, I love you. I apologize. I will buy you lunch. But they're now struggling, right? HOA's going up. As I said earlier, their insurances are going up. Now their taxes are going to, if they don't win their appeal, their taxes potentially will go up. And we're having this real, honest, open discussion about putting an apartment in my basement. You know, we can sell their house now. They can do very well with the home. I only will charge them a little bit of rent. I'm a nasty landlord. But we'll get Allied Property Management to manage it. Everything will be perfect.
Yeah, well, you'll want,
Suzanne will handle it. No problem.
just in case there needs to be an eviction, you want a third party.
I totally want
Yeah.
Suzanne to handle that. You know, hey, I'm sorry, this is Suzanne. But no, all kidding aside. And if you read through the NAR statistics that just came out, there's 170 some odd pages about the typical buyer-seller profile. This multi-generational family scenario is starting to build up. But you're 100% right. You know, where I refer to it as the missing middle. People use the term missing middle as more of a structural thing, you know, housing, the physical house, the physical resident. I was up at the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference a week or so ago before Thanksgiving, and I was actually talking about this, that you can't just do the missing middle of structures, right? You know, it's physical, you know, to define it is you have single family, detached, multifamily, and in the middle you have these different quads and, you know, duplexes and so forth and so on. The other side of the coin is you have to have it with the income level or who we're serving or who's taking occupancy in that end of it. And that is dropping off tremendously. My father, who's a retired New York City fireman, she says, Keith, where is the cop and fireman and the teacher who's making $30,000, $40,000 a year just coming? Where are they going to live? I said, I wish I had an answer for that, Pop. I don't have an answer for that.
Particularly if you haven't had some sort of family or generational home where there's equity to roll forward.
Yeah, where does the people who serve us the most, where do they live? And it's why we spend so much time, I know you do, spend so much time trying to help housing affordability and do this. Maybe I'm getting too much on my soapbox on this, but it matters in my opinion. And if you're listening or watching either today or in the future, you've got till December 9th, 4 p.m. to send it to Reassessment Appeal 2023 at FulvanaCounty.org. That's Reassessment Appeal, it's all one word, 2023 at FulvanaCounty.org. You need to send them an email that you're appealing it. You need to show them why you feel the home is overassessed. And that starts the process. If you send it in at 5 p.m. on Friday, you missed out on the opportunity. So please reach out to your trusted advisor, your trusted real estate professional, your trusted, let's see if Dono won't be mad at me today, realtor. Did I do good?
No.
I didn't.
It's only 2 syllables.
Damn.
But much like names, we're just going to move on.
Well, I didn't make up new words today. Usually I make up new words that don't exist.
And I think, too, if I can quote Neil, if you're concerned about what the county, the city, whoever your local government is, about what they're doing with taxes and how they're spending money, there are seats open at the meetings where these decisions are made. And local government's ability to address the needs of its constituents is really connected to those constituents being vocal and being involved.
So I'm following through on a couple of texts from Quentin, from Judah, so thank you very much. Jessica Graham has talked about Hollymead. Same process. They will not release the tax assessments until mid-January, mid to end January, and typically you have until the end of February. If you look, use a simple Google search, they'll have a real estate assessment review form. It's a little bit different than Fluvanna County. They actually have a form to fill out, and that starts the process in it. Jessica, I would suggest that you reach out to a trusted advisor and maybe start getting the market value on your home, on your grandparents' home. So at least you kind of know where the market value is. Get a CMA, as Quentin was talking about it. And, you know, if you would like our help, go ahead and text us. Oh, I'm getting a text from my father. But text, DM me or somebody, or if you're a trusted real estate professional that you work with. I'll stay away from the realtor.
Oh, you just...
I'm getting worse, ain't I?
Just
I'm going
can't.
deeper in the hole. It's a New York accent. I can't help it.
And I think it's interesting, Katie was just chiming in about folks that make too much to qualify but not enough
Yeah.
to cover the taxes. We can wrap that into the box of that missing middle. You know, there's a lot of sort of donut holes of programs and politics where folks that are doing too well to really qualify for a lot of the low-income assistance,
Sure.
but not so well to meet these other needs, that fall through the cracks. And so hopefully as we move through these processes and we get better at it, we can make sure that the enormous insanity that was the real estate market for the last 2 years does not become the insanity for the next 12 months with our taxes and the abatements and the things that go on to help keep people in homes.
So that was kind of what I was talking about in the topic on the missing middle. So you
Yep.
said it a whole bunch better than I did. You know, this whole missing middle is exactly that. Look, there's a way to help that donut hole. Now's the time to do this. Now's the time in this reassessment. You know, I'm going to quote Ned Galloway, Albemarle County Board of Supervisor.
Are you listening, Ned?
Ned. Somebody text Ned. But he said something which is very important. During the budget process, and Judah, if you wouldn't mind putting my famous triangle back up, when we start going through the step process, step number 2, which is the budget process, that's when you really know how an elected official is going to vote on something in the future, is how they handle that budget. So, look, one way of possibly fixing this donut hole of this, you know, I make just enough, I make over this minimum threshold, is maybe change the threshold, right? And the way that works is you've got to petition your local
Correct.
thing. I will need to do some research on it and reach out to Neil, because some of that stuff may be mandated, the maximum or the minimum, depending on how you look at it, may be mandated by the state. I don't know that for a fact, and I'm sure Neil might know that if he wants to chime in on it. But some of this may, under the Dillon rule, be mandated by the state. You can't go over a certain amount. If that's the case, if that's not the case, then that's a potential way to help others stay in our community.
Which I'm all for, especially the folks that have worked, grown up, and retired here.
Oh, Woody's giving you a shout out. Love when
Hey, Woody.
Love when QB is on complex property assessment.
Oh my gosh.
Challenges may need an appraisal. We are always happy to be here. if needed. So what Woody is saying, so my suggestion is before you hire somebody like Woody to come in and reassess your piece of property, which I would reappraise, I would definitely do that. Start with the real estate agents. Not going to cost you anything, let's be frank. It at least gets you in the system started, and if you get rejected and have to go to the Board of Equalization, then I would reach out to Woody and hire him to give, or whoever, to give an appraisal. Then they can't contest that. It'll cost you a little bit of money to do it, but it'll save you a substantial amount of money on the back end. So I promised you 45 minutes. We're kind of over the 45-minute mark.
And that surprises me because you're always so punctual.
We're going to go down that road?
Just saying.
You know what, my friend? I don't know what happened. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was always 15 minutes early. If I show up 15 minutes late now, that's a win. And I don't know where that all came from. Really, I just don't know where that all came from. Today I was on time. I walked in right at 10 o'clock. No? Maybe
Sure.
a little bit less. Maybe a little bit less on it. But I did have to get a cup of coffee and come in. So look, I just thank you. I love you with all my heart and soul. This was a last minute, can you come and sit and talk to me for 45 minutes?
And you got me how I was. I didn't shave this
I
morning.
love you just the way you are.
Wearing a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
My hair's kind of sticking up. 'Cause I haven't
Yeah, I
gotten a
noticed that.
haircut in a
I
while.
wasn't going to say anything
Yeah.
about the hair. You had to go there.
I don't notice it except that I'm sitting here looking at myself on
looking at
camera and I'm like,
Well,
can we fix this?
My ADD will not allow me to look at myself on the camera because I'll be just staring at it, and it's hard enough for me to remember people's names and how to speak people's names. But look, today was the essence of why Friday's our 400th show.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? And I have a surprise for the 400th show, which Jerry doesn't know about, or even Judah doesn't know about, that may involve getting dressed up. Just saying. It's something you might not want to miss. So, look, the part of why, somebody asked me the other day, and I'm going to go down memory lane, why do I do the show? And it was like, does it bring you business? Does it do this? Does it do that? And yeah, I'm very blessed, right? It does help. But part of why I started it was, we were always getting questions about real estate, and I wanted the ability to answer it and the ability to talk to folks. Anybody in this room or anybody on this feed or anybody listening to us ever received something in writing from me? You think I make up words? Try seeing me. You get texts and emails from me, right? Right? Smith's making up words again.
Yeah, you have to speak Keith.
And you have to be able to speak Keith. So I can't write. I can do this a lot better than I can write. Maybe not
There would
much
be some
better.
folks that would question that, but yes, it is easier to talk. You can get more
I
done
thought you loved
speaking.
me, but that's okay. So I get people that reach out to me all the time or in the line at Whole Foods or whatever and say, hey, thank you for what you said. I used it. It made a difference. So, as long as that keeps on happening, I'm all in until Mrs. Smith says you're not all in anymore. But at the moment, I'm all in. Quentin, I'll give you the last word to wrap up, and please share some wonderful Quentin
Oh,
wisdom.
gosh. Just
Put you on the spot.
all I can tell you is how grateful I am for everything that I've been able to have and the people that are surrounding me.
Yeah.
There's you, there's Katie, there's all these other folks, some of whom are on this feed and some are not. And just so grateful for people that work really hard to have enough for them and their families. And when they have extra, they want to help their communities and build a bigger table so that more people can share. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about the realtor community here in the car footprint is their commitment to doing that and doing their damnedest to leave their community a better place year by year and week by week.
That's a great comment. Take a look at any nonprofit board or volunteer board. I can assure you there's a couple of realtors on it, real estate professionals. There's a couple of car folks on it. I know I said I would give you the last word, but you made me think of
It's
something.
quite all right.
Which is not too unexpected. So one of our traditions at our Thanksgiving table, before all heck breaks loose, is we all grab hands, we say a prayer, we thank the deity above, whoever you should believe in. We believe in God, right? But whoever you should believe in, on that for everything you have. And I go around the table, and they know this. They know this happens every year. Every year I get pushback. I go around the table. I said, "Please tell me the one thing that you were thankful for. You know, that isn't the typical thing, right? You know, I'm thankful for my partner. I'm thankful for my health. Something that's outside of the norm that you're thankful for." And what would your answer be?
Oh gosh, you're only allowed to do this to your family.
Oh, but your family. So guess what?
You know, when we say that, we sort of mean that in this
No.
colloquial,
No.
colloquial sort of
No,
thing.
no. There's no colloquial. You've earned my will. You've got all my debt now. Good luck with that. What's you know? Just pick something that you're thankful other than family and health and stuff like that.
Oh gosh, but those things are so important.
They are.
I'm really thankful for moments where I get to step outside of myself. I think one of the hazards of what we do, you have to have sort of a thick skin to do what we do. The vast majority of our clients are lovely people, and then there's a handful of you all that are less than lovely. And some of the
But
things,
those are few, though.
you know, just a handful. Those are very rare, but they're there, and that can sometimes harden you to what's going on around. And so I'm really grateful for the moments that I get to step outside of myself
There you go.
and sort of not be in the persona or the tornado or any of the other words you could use that can describe my life, and just be thankful for so many of the simple things I had that 15 years ago, there was no guarantee I would have them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be things from, I get to drive a really nice car, I'm going up to a cabin in the snow in a couple weeks, I have really good friends around me that get to contribute in ways both large and small to my happiness. And if you can step out of yourself a little bit, you really do have many, many things to be grateful for. I think that's true of most of us. And there's something kind of miraculous about finding points of gratitude, because it can just change your perspective and help you not succumb to the dread that is the current news cycle in our country.
God forbid, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, and I think I know you well enough to know, whatever the mainstream media, Leon and I consume zero amount of it. We read a lot. I read lots of newspapers and articles and stuff, long format kind of reading. Your answer is 1,000% better than mine was. Mine I thought was good, but you knocked it out of the ballpark. What I am most thankful for is that we get to help people. We get to serve people and get to serve them in one of the big threes, right? Food, shelter, and clothing, right? We do shelter. I almost did the other finger. We do shelter. Shelter was the middle one, but we do shelter on that. And that's huge. We get to help people there on that end of it. And this may sound a bit passe. Did I make up another new word?
There
I
we
made
go.
up a new word. I made Keith. Yay, go Keith. Passe, is that better?
That's better.
Not pisse, but passe. I'm sorry. It's just the way.
Is
it's just-
pissé sort of like snooty pissed?
No. I'm thinking of the French pissoir. So anyway, but it's truly. I'm going to look you in the face, my friend. It's truly not about the money. It's about helping people and helping people achieve this huge thing in their life. And it's scary, and it's different. It changes from the next 5 minutes to this thing. But to be able to help people make this thing is what I'm most thankful for. Now, of course, the family and the health and all that stuff. But outside of that, that is my big thankfulness. Judah, how about you, man? Don't say
She just
me.
time's
I'm
up.
just trying to do a show, Keith. Shut up. All righty. Well, hey, we're out. We're now. It's up to you. Do you want to answer it? What do you think you're most thankful for this year?
What am I most thankful for? Oh man. You know, I'm just thankful that we've got this beautiful city to live in, and friends like Keith and Quentin, and we take a lot of things for granted.
Good answer, my friend. So we're an hour in. Quentin, thank you. I lied.
Happy Monday.
I lied to you a little bit, so we're at 15 minutes over.
Yona and I talk about your tendency to exaggerate from time to time.
Thank you. Everybody have a great Monday. Just as if you live in Fluvanna and you think you're overpaying, please, it's the 9th of December. You got to 4 p.m. to do it. If you need any help, DM a trust advisor or myself. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Quentin, thank you, buddy.